the big breaking news story. Bernie Sanders, the Vermont senator, the independent Vermont senator, deciding to suspend his presidential campaign. Steve Kornacki follows the numbers like no one else. And Steve, I can't see you right now. I don't think you probably have your big board there in your apartment. But you've been following the numbers from the very beginning. Senator Sanders struggled mightily with brown voters. He struggled mightily with black voters as well. But if I recall correctly, Steve, he had also started to lose some of his support this time around with working class voters.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Craig, the trajectory of this Bernie Sanders campaign. Honestly, I've never quite seen something like this 2020 Democratic race, and that was even before the coronavirus came in and just changed everything altogether. What you had with Bernie Sanders was a candidate who history will show in the Iowa caucuses, he won the popular vote out there, by thousands of votes, the most people. He had the most supporters of any candidate in Iowa. He went into New Hampshire. He won the New Hampshire primary. He went to the third state, the Nevada caucuses. He won the Nevada caucuses handily. And then it's like the floor just fell out. And what really happened there was the rest of the party at that point, when Bernie Sanders emerged from those first three states with two clean victories and one sort of contested victory there in Iowa, if you want to call it that. When he emerged with that, it was as if the rest of the Democratic Party almost overnight sort of came to attention and said, look, if we don't do something, Bernie Sanders is going to be the Democratic nominee. And it was at that point that you saw this incredible movement towards Joe Biden. You saw the endorsement of Jim Clyburn for Joe Biden in South Carolina. You saw Biden suddenly win South Carolina by 30 points. You saw Buttigieg get out. You saw Klobuchar get out. You saw his flood of endorsements for Joe Biden. And the world just changed almost overnight in Democratic politics. And it came to the point then where Bernie Sanders, despite all of that early success, all of the talk that, hey, we've seen candidates in the past who've done really well in the early states and the bandwagon grows, he just hit a wall. The minute he got out of those first three states, he hit a wall. You didn't see his support grow. You saw him reaching the same very small level of support in 2020 that he got from African-American voters in 2016. It was something his campaign, it was something that Bernie Sanders himself spent 4 years trying to fix. He remembered in 2016, one of the big reasons he ultimately fell short against Hillary Clinton, it was lack of support from African-American voters. It was running at 15, 20, 25% in state after state among black voters against Hillary Clinton. It made all the difference for him in 2016, and he and his campaign spent 4 years trying to address that, trying to make sure it wouldn't happen again in 2020. But as soon as you got to South Carolina, it absolutely happened again. The numbers for Bernie Sanders among black voters, basically the exact same in 2020 as they were in 2016. And then, as you mentioned it, when you got out of South Carolina, when the rest of the Democratic Party began sort of coalescing around Joe Biden, you started to see it in states like Michigan and in Minnesota and in Missouri. And it looked, at least according to the polling, like we were likely to see that happen in Wisconsin. We will see in a week's time what the votes that were cast there yesterday looked like. But it was blue-collar white voters. It was working-class white voters. That's a big constituency there still in the Democratic politics and the primaries. It's a big constituency in the general election. That is a group of voters that Bernie Sanders did extremely well with in 2016 against Hillary Clinton. He won Wisconsin in 2016 over Hillary Clinton by 14 points. He famously beat Hillary Clinton in Michigan in 2016. In those kinds of states, you were just seeing a night and day difference. Biden versus Sanders. Biden was winning lopsided landslides in those states. Clinton versus Sanders. Sanders could win those states. Sanders could even win some of those states by big margins. That was the difference of the blue-collar white support that Sanders had in 16 and did not have in 2020. And, of course, one of the theories out there about Sanders and what was sort of revealed about his campaign over the last couple weeks, the last couple months, is that a big component of that success he had in 2016, and he did have incredible success in 2016 in terms of the votes that he got, the delegates he got. How much of that, though, Craig, was simply voters who could not vote, would not vote for Hillary Clinton? They didn't like Hillary Clinton, and Sanders was the other name on the ballot. I think he and his campaign were counting on those voters who were there in 16 being there again in 20, and I think it was a rude awakening for them when they got to places like Michigan, and that just wasn't the case anymore.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.